Welcome everyone this evening to tonight's council meeting, and I acknowledge the Wadawurrung people and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Greater Geelong community and are joining us this evening, either in person or online. The meeting is being broadcast on the internet, and the recording of the meeting will be published on council's website. So just with that, a special welcome to the students of Sacred Heart who are with us this evening, and also some of the representatives of our Youth Council I see are also in the chamber. So welcome all this evening, and I hope you enjoy the evening. And of course we'll have a presentation from the Junior Mayor later today. Apologies, I don't think we have any apologies this evening. We've got a full house, complement of councillors. We have a leave of absence request that be granted to Councillor Anthony Aiken for the dates 4 April to 12 April 2026 inclusive. So if I can have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Kados, and all those in favour. So that's carried unanimously. Declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest this evening? No? Okay. Did look like a sort of, didn't it, from Councillor Nelson? No, I don't think that was it? No. And then confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of council that was held on the 3rd of March 2026. If I can have a councillor move that. Councillor Eddie Contel and Councillor Aiken and seconder. So all those in favour? So it's carried unanimously. We then move to question time. And I've received a series of questions, so I'll go through those and call up the respective submitters who are given 3 minutes to speak to us. So the first one is Dean Vella in relation to Rhodes and Packington Street. Dean Vella with us this evening? No? Okay, the record show Marie's not there, Dean's not there. And Marie Newraith? Newraith? Yes, if you could please come up. A question in relation to creche services.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. My name's Marie Newrath and I'm a mum of 2 young children, Miles and Lily. I'm here representing hundreds of families who rely on the swim, sport and leisure creche. But tonight, I'm not just the woman who started a petition. I'm a mum and a teacher running on empty, standing here or sitting during dinner time, juggling children, work and the invisible load so many parents carry. So tonight I'd like to ask, raise your hand if you are a parent. Now keep your hand raised if you've ever felt overwhelmed, anxious or unsupported. I know I have. In Greater Geelong, 1 in 4 adults reports loneliness and nearly a third experience anxiety or depression. These are your residents, your families doing their best to cope. And that's why the creche matters. It's not a convenience, it's a preventative mental health support. It allows parents to exercise during reducing stress and improves well-being. It creates connection and reduces isolation. It gives parents time to care for themselves, building resilience for their families. Remove it and you're removing a lifeline. I know this because I've lived it. For 5 years, this creche has been my support network and my village. When my daughter Lily was born, I experienced burnout and anxiety. I couldn't attend medical appointments with children. My son was in and out of hospital, and my husband works in Melbourne full-time, and my parents are currently in a war zone in Europe. I was overwhelmed, still am, and I'm alone, even today. But the creche stepped in.
If I could just bring you to your question, because this is not a position of debate. This is you asking questions, and we'll provide your answers, because you're going to run out of time in a minute to ask your question.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Sorry. I was of the understanding I was presenting the petition tonight. So one of the questions was, can you explain how the creche closures meet Council's own commitment to delivering equitable health and wellbeing outcomes and increasing participation in sport and leisure facilities by reducing barriers, including cost and access, so physical activity is inclusive for all people of all backgrounds, including those on low income and families?
I'll refer that to Executive Director for City Life, Anthony Basford.
Thank you for the question and in your introduction. City is currently making an operational review of services within the Sport and Leisure Department. We acknowledge the importance, as you have, of the services. These services provide for health and wellbeing outcomes for our members who are women, parents and families. These outcomes, however, must be balanced against our obligation to provide sustainable services that deliver the greatest benefit across the broader community and also, in particularly in relation to childcare, meet very stringent regulations relating to care of children.
Your second question?
The second question I had was, why weren't all members advised? It's clear from the comments on the petitions that many members who don't use the service still value and importance in using it, and they should also have been notified. Was this a deliberate strategy to try and push the closures through quietly?
That wasn't your submitted question.
Sorry. I've got a few. I've collected a number of questions from different people, and my apologies for that.
If you have a question here, we can respond to the question.
I think it was, can you confirm if any member or public consultation was carried out prior to advising employees and users of the proposed creche service?
And I'll refer to Executive Director Anthony Basford, City Life.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Marie. At this stage, no formal decision has been made. The formal consultation process is currently underway with impacted employees, and we will carefully consider feedback received from members of the public and service users, and all feedback will be reviewed before the final determination is made, including the petition, which I believe is being presented later. Thank you.
Am I able to respond to that in any way, or
No,
just ask?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, if I may, I know that Marie has actually tabled a petition. It might be useful to clarify for Marie that she gets the opportunity to make a further presentation when you table the petition at the relevant time in the agenda.
Okay, sorry, my mistake. Thanks for that.
Thank you. The next one, Morgan Quick, question in relation to footpaths. Louis DeCoca, question in relation to planning intersection upgrades. I'll allow you to ask the question because I think it's on a related topic to what you were speaking. Yeah.
Evening, Mayor, Councillors. My name is Jean Nell. I live in Highton. I'm here as a proxy for Louis de Kooker, who also lives in Highton. There's more than one question. So I'm going to start with a question about Riversdale. First of all, let me start by congratulating the Council on its draft plan for nature. It is a welcome commitment to protecting Geelong's biodiversity while managing growth. The irony is not lost on me that I'm here tonight posing questions about the management of valuable green space along the Barwon River, while that plan is also on tonight's agenda for endorsement. Without commenting on the draft directly and risking breaching the Council public questions terms of reference, I would ask the Council to hold 3 of its own findings in that plan firmly in mind. First, The Barwon and Moorabool River corridors are among the community's most valued, and I quote from that plan, natural places in the city. Second, the Wadawurrung consider the Barwon and its connected waterways and wetlands to be a living entity. And thirdly, the plan acknowledges that nature is not bound by management boundaries, making coordination with other agencies, and in particular, the broader private sector
Jan,
essential.
if I could just stop you there. What you're saying is not in line with the questions submitted. And if you're a proxy, you literally need to stick to exactly the question that Louis has submitted. You don't have license to then speak on your own behalf. If that's what you want, you can submit your own question. But please, if you could stick to the question.
It's not a question, it's an introduction, and I have confirmed it with Louis.
I can't speak to that. You have a question
By
that's
all
there.
means.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor.
'Cause
I will
otherwise we
stick
can't
exactly.
verify anything that you're saying.
Oh, I'm sure you can verify. We can have a long discussion about
Well, not
verification.
tonight, and it's not-
Exactly. So better not raise it. So, Louis' question. The significant landscape overlay Schedule 2 applies to land along the northern bank of the Barwon River in Newtown, and it is intended to protect the quality of the river's green space and views from its banks. The overlay recognises the northern escarpment, and Louis quoted from the overlay, of particular visual significance from both the river banks and the higher lands on the south bank. It also recognises that the river banks have been, and again, I'm quoting Louis, quoting from the overlay, the planning document. It also recognises that the river banks have been progressively acquired and developed for a significant open space spine over many years, and the enjoyment of this space should not be compromised by inappropriate or imposing development. That's a direct quote from the planning document. The current green space is the result of protection and public investment over decades. So this is Louis' question. When assessing development applications on land subject to significant landscape overlay 2, along the northern escarpment, and the notes he gave me is, this is in bold, to date, what community consultation has Council undertaken to understand which views and open green space qualities the community wishes to see protected or even enhanced, and which types of development the community views as, quoted, inappropriate or imposing? Specifically, has any such consultation informed Council's decision on these applications? And again, he highlighted it by printing it in bold to make sure that you don't see it as a future plan, but what has happened to date. And if so, this is in terms of the consultation that informed Council's decisions. This consultation, if there's been any, what form did it take, and what were its findings?
A question to the Acting Executive Director, Jackie Randalls, for Growth in Place.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you for appearing tonight on behalf of Louis. We have also had a conversation with Louis earlier today, just to clarify that we understood the question correctly.
I am aware, yeah.
So, because we were a little unsure. So from our conversations with Louis, our answer is, when Council assesses planning applications, we take into account the views of any submissions received to the public notice. There has been no community consultation in relation to the SLO2 area specifically, this date.
Thank you.
Question 2.
Upgrades of intersections in Highton are underway, with one completed, that's the North Valley Mount Pleasant roundabout, which a couple of years ago there was, money spent to green it, and another nearing completion in Roslyn North Valley, and apparently more in planning. So Louis' question, will the council make the intersection analyses and any traffic flow and transport analyses for traffic in Highton that informed this work available to the community?
Again, to Acting Executive Director for Growth in Place, Jackie Randalls.
The information regarding intersection analyses and traffic flow and transport analyses for traffic in Highton can be requested through our Freedom of Information process, and we can share the response via email tomorrow so that Louis also has the link that he requires to be able to request that Freedom of Information.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, for the question and for the answers. I now go back to John MacArthur in relation to permit conditions, if John is there. John MacArthur. John MacArthur. Pierre Debates. Drainage. No. And Jennifer Banto. In Heritage and Plan for Nature. And that's the last one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councillors and staff. My question refers to agenda item 2.2, New Heritage Overlays Greater Geelong Outer Areas Heritage Study. Congratulations to Council for undertaking this comprehensive study. The Outer Areas Heritage Study was a landmark document in its day by David Rowe and Lorraine Huddle after council amalgamation, and it was to try and identify gaps that all the previous councils had missed in protecting heritage. It's a massive document. 16 volumes, and this is only one of the 16, hundreds of properties. I think it should, in the report, it's not attributed to the authors. I think it'd be good if there was an explanation of what the study actually was, what its purpose was, and who wrote it. Because I couldn't find the authorship, maybe I missed it. That's just a suggestion. So, regarding the particular property, it's 70 Gazapur Road, Warn Ponds. There's a 4-page detailed study of that property in this volume 16, which covers Warn Ponds. And it's got maps, statement of significance, history, and mentions that it was owned by Redpath way back in the 1860s. So my question is that this cottage was the home of Australian cricket legend Ian Redpath, MBE, who played 66 test matches for Australia. He was born in Geelong, educated at Newtown Primary School, State School, and then later at Geelong College. Apparently he was known as Redders, and his grandfather, William Ritchie Redpath, operated a woolen mill on the Barwon. It's still there, fabulous polychrome brickwork, and I think its chimney's still existing, so it's the family's been here for generations. Could Council please consider reviewing this property's status under Criteria H, special associations with the life or work of a person of importance in our history, and consider reassessing its significance for inclusion in this current study, which is preparing an amendment, isn't it, for the heritage overlay to be applied?
Yep. I'll refer that to Executive Director Jackie Randalls.
Thanks for your question, Jennifer, and nice to see you again. So the Charlemont, Marshall and Warren Ponds Heritage Study 2024 was endorsed by Council at its meeting of the 27th of August 2024. At that time, 76 to 80 Gazapur Road, Warren Ponds, was not recommended for the heritage overlay as the integrity of the farmhouse was difficult to assess from the public domain. It was recommended that future reassessment could take place on the basis of new information. On the basis of the farmhouse having associative significance to Australian Test cricketer Ian Redpath, Council will prepare a draft heritage assessment for consideration by Council at a later date. So thank you.
Thank you, that's great news.
And so then, question 2, Jennifer?
Yeah, just a quick comment, please, if I may, because it's come to our attention because it was auctioned last week, on 14th of March it was auctioned, and it was passed in, so there's a concern it may get knocked over.
I saw that in the paper. That's
good.
Yeah, so question 2 then?
Yes. Right, this is to do with agenda item 2.3, draft plan for nature, 2026 to 36. It's a terrific comprehensive plan, and it's considered many aspects of significant landscapes. However, it doesn't appear to reference heritage trees and heritage landscapes, unless I've missed it again. But I did search through the 100 pages to try and see the word heritage, and I couldn't see it. So I wonder, please, if council officers could consider, I know this is only a draft, so presumably you're looking for contributions from the community. The National Trust, for instance, has a significant tree register. Heritage Victoria has a significant tree register, and I think, although it's not formalised, City of Greater Geelong also has a list of trees that former Superintendent of Parks and Gardens created. So I wonder if, please, that can be considered, and also avenues of honour. There are some remarkable avenues of honour for to remember the soldiers. Beautiful avenues of trees, that should be included as well. And I'd like to compliment Parks and Gardens, actually, because at this time of year there must be hundreds of roundabouts in the city, and they're all blooming beautifully with lovely colours and plantings, and the maintenance of street avenues are
Right, so,
also very good.
Yeah,
I think Council's doing well in that department.
So I think that we've got the gist of that one. So I'll refer to Executive Director James Sturton to have a go at that one.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Jennifer, for your question and also your interest in the draft plan for nature. The draft plan has been developed using a landscape scale approach to biodiversity, informed by community consultation and detailed mapping of remnant vegetation, ecological values and remnant trees across the city. While heritage trees and heritage landscapes are not identified as a standalone category within the plan, many significant and remnant trees are already captured through existing planning, heritage and environmental frameworks and contribute directly to the broader natural systems addressed within the plan. This includes trees protected through planning scheme controls, overlays and entries on the significant tree and landscape registers. The existing significant tree and landscape registers maintained by the Victorian Government and the National Trust continue to operate through established planning, heritage and asset management processes, ensuring that identified trees are considered during development assessment and land use decision making. Council recognises the important role that significant and heritage trees play in shaping local character, supporting biodiversity and contributing to cultural and landscape values. Feedback received during the exhibition period will help inform how the final plan for nature can more clearly articulate its relationship with planning controls and heritage frameworks, including opportunities to strengthen the identification and protection of significant trees through statutory and strategic planning processes. This commitment is further reflected in Council's broader urban forestry leadership, with the City of Greater Geelong having just been recognised as a Tree City of the World for a third consecutive year, acknowledging ongoing investment in tree protection, sustainable management and canopy enhancement across the municipality. I do note that the draft plan tonight is going out to consultation and we do seek feedback from the whole community about it, and I do want to thank you very much for your feedback, and I'll make sure that I'll pass that on to the Parks and Natural Assets team. They'll be thrilled that you've noted it in the public forum. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jennifer, very good, and thank you for those answers. So that concludes question time. We now move to petitions and joint letters. So I now invite Marie Newirth to speak on behalf of the petition requesting...
Mr Mayor, please. There is a request for a further question.
Sorry? The question time is now concluded. I've said I've closed question time. We're now moving into petitions.
Mayor, point of order.
Thank you.
We do actually have provision in our governance rules to allow for questions. We have actually allowed, we do actually have sufficient time to allow for additional questions from the floor.
Our practice is that people need to submit the day before to give officers the opportunity to prepare. So that's my determination. Thank you. So we'll move to petitions and joint letters. So again, Marie Newirth, and you can speak on behalf of your petition you've got 3 minutes in relation to retaining swim, sport, leisure, creche services.
Okay, sorry that I mixed it up the order before, but I'll do my best. When my daughter Lily was born, I experienced burnout and anxiety. I couldn't attend medical appointments with children. My son was in and out of hospital, and my husband works in Melbourne, and my parents reside in Europe for much of the year. I was overwhelmed and alone, but the creche stepped in. The creche didn't just look after my children, they looked after me, with warm smiles and reassurance, practical advice when I needed it most. They created a safe space, not just for Miles and Lily to learn and grow, but for me to also breathe. Because of this service, I was able to see a psychologist when I needed help. I was able to attend fitness sessions and be supported physically and mentally. I'd walk in feeling overwhelmed and walk out feeling capable and strong again. And that's why I started this petition, a petition that has over 570 signatures. Another GP in our local area has also started a petition, Elise Davey, and she also has 280 signatures. So combined, we have almost 900 signatures. My children thrived attending the creche. Miles and Lily have built strong relationships with their educators and have learnt so much in their care. This is more than a creche, it's an early intervention, it is a community and it's a prevention. It directly delivers on Council's commitment to mental wellbeing, inclusion and active living. It supports women, it supports children and it supports vulnerable and isolated families. My husband said it also supports him. And it has done so for 16 years. Today, we bring you the voices of the community. As mentioned, 800 people have signed 2 petitions to keep this service. We understand your need for sustainability, but closure should not be the first option. It should be the last. We ask you to commit to a proper review of this service. Explore targeted hours, especially during peak times. Partner with local organisations to improve awareness through maternal health. We've got a maternal child health worker here who I was talking to, and advertising it through them. There are parents who are struggling with postnatal depression, burnout, and they don't have other options or support networks. Having counselling networks, which are already council run, you can tie it in. Strengthening marketing to ensure that this service is visible and accessible to busy families, and reviewing fees for sustainability. Most importantly, working with families to co-design a solution. Re-energise this service, don't remove it, because this is achievable and the benefits are clear. Stronger families, healthier parents, and a more connected community. Sounds like a good idea to me. We don't close essential services because they require investment. So why close a service that protects mental health at its earliest point? We respectfully ask you to pause any decision, consult the community and genuinely explore sustainable alternatives, because the creche is more than a childcare, it's a lifeline. And for many of us, it's the reason we're coping at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. If you could, have you tabled that petition already?
Yes,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Mayor, if I may, I would like to actually address the motion, the petition, please, just for a minute. I'd like to say a few words about the petition, if I may, just very briefly. Firstly, I'd actually like to move a motion of dissent, and I'm seeking a seconder for that. We actually had a member of the public ask if they were enabled to ask a question from the floor. We are actually still within the 45 minutes allowed for public questions from the floor, so I'm seeking a seconder for that motion of dissent.
I'll get some guidance. If you could respond to Councillor, please.
The motion of dissent needed to be moved. Mayor, the motion of dissent needed to be moved at the time of the Mayor making his decision. We've moved on to the next business item.
What a little baby. Come on, guys, please.
Marie, that's all I can say. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr Mayor, I would still like to say something if I could, actually, specifically targeted to the petition, only for 1 minute, no more. So, Mr Mayor, thank you. I'd just like to thank everyone who's come along tonight to present and support this important petition, and also, obviously, to everyone who's actually signed the petition. I believe that with the 2 petitions, only one of which has been tabled tonight, we actually have close to 1,000 signatures, which I think clearly demonstrates that there is community sentiment and strong community support for the continuation of these vital community services. I also want to thank all the residents who have contacted me and probably some other councillors separately to express how very important these creche services are for at the swim, sport and leisure centres for their families and for their families' well-being. In life, we protect what we value, and it's clear that our community values the continued delivery of these creche services with, as I mentioned, almost 1,000 signatures gathered only over 3 weeks. In conversations that I've had with parents, they've particularly spoken about the exceptional care provided for their children at these creches, testament to the hard work of the essential workers, and the opportunity that they provide parents to look after their own health and well-being, as well as the critical place the creches play in providing alternative, affordable, occasional childcare at these creches, which seems to be a gap in the market even with the provision of the 3- and 4-year-old kinder programs. It's been stressed by the city that no definite decision has been made about the future of these creche services, so I strongly encourage the community to keep advocating and raising your voices and raising your concerns. And I'll certainly do what I can to advocate for these vital community services and the essential workers that support them in the hope that we can achieve a good outcome for all. Thanks very much.
Mr Mayor.
I have made my deliberations. People are free to contact the councillors or contact me, but we're running a meeting here, please, Jean. And can I just continue with that, please? You can contact me tomorrow, but tonight we're running according to the program, and I'm moving on now to the next petition. So if you could please sit down, and you can phone me tomorrow as well. You're more than welcome, okay? You'll have every opportunity to have a chat to me tomorrow. Every opportunity. Jean. 35. Thank you, Jean. 6:35. Okay, thank you. Please, if you could take a seat. And now move to petition by inviting Councillor Rowan Story to speak to a petition on behalf of residents submitting in relation to Ibbotson Street dust issues. Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm very happy to sponsor this petition, which has the signatures of 419 residents. Ibbotson Street, between St Leonard's Golf Club and Regal Road, is the source of significant road dust that is causing residents a range of concerns and issues, including health and amenity. The undersigned people request Council to investigate and undertake road sealing works between St Leonard's Golf Club and Regal Road as a priority. And Mr Mayor, could I add that I have met with several groups of residents in this region and also walked the road and driven the road, and I'm very happy to sponsor this petition. Thank you.
Councillor Story, so you can table that. Right, we move to Section 2 reports. The first item is the Youth Council first report for 2026. If I can have a councillor move that report.
Yeah, we've actually got the Mayor's address first. We normally have the Mayor's address first, and then we actually have the motion.
Move the item, and then we'll have the Mayor come down. So you're moving the item? Councillor Aiken and seconder Councillor Wilkinson. We now invite the Junior Mayor to come up and address the Council in relation to their first report. So, Councillor Ram.
Begin. Good evening. To begin, on behalf of the Youth Council, I would like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people as the traditional owners of the land where we live, learn, work and dream. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We walk alongside the Wadawurrung and all First Nations people to build an inclusive and respectful Geelong and to care for country so it can thrive. We honour their deep spiritual connection to country, where the soil beneath our feet, the water in our streams, and the sun rising in the sky carry stories passed down through the generations. Good evening, Mayor Dr. Contal OAM, councillors, executive directors, fellow Youth Council representatives and community members. Also, a special welcome to the students from Sacred Heart College who are observing tonight's meeting. The Youth Council is excited to have you here as we present our first report for the year. My name is Viggy and I'm here on behalf of the 2026 Youth Council to present our first report. This report begins by introducing the 11 members of this year's Youth Council, our individual passions, and the unique skills and experiences each member brings to the table. Our journey together began in January with a 3-day induction program delivered by the city's Youth Development Unit, supported by the Leadership Academy Australia. This induction laid the foundation for our team, helping us understand each other's strengths while also building trust and friendship. From there, we explored the different levels of government, reviewed key council strategies and plans, and identified major issues impacting youth people in Geelong today. Workshops on emotional intelligence, leadership development, and conflict resolution helped us recognise that strong collaboration and communication are essential to creating meaningful change. Building on what we learnt from our induction and guided by data such as the 2025 Geelong Youth Survey and the Mission Australia Youth Survey, we identified our 4 priority areas for 2026. These are as follows: youth health and wellbeing, inclusivity and safety within the community, protecting native lands, skies and waterways, and economic equality and opportunity. We understand that across Geelong, young people are navigating increasing mental health challenges. They are deeply concerned about climate and environmental sustainability. They want communities that are safe, inclusive and equitable across all suburbs. And they are, perhaps surprisingly, increasingly aware of the financial pressures shaping their futures and impacting their families. These insights will guide our work and reinforce the importance of our role this year. The week following our 3-day induction, we returned here, the City Hall, for our formal induction on the 21st of January, where 9 members bravely delivered speeches for the role of Junior Mayor. I want to acknowledge the confidence and courage shown not only by the 9 nominees, but by all 11 Youth Council members who have stepped into their roles with enthusiasm and commitment. We also extend our thanks to our family, friends, councillors and city staff who attended and supported us during our formal induction. I'm honoured to have been elected Junior Mayor alongside Bailey Roberts as Junior Deputy Mayor. We are grateful for the trust placed in us and will lead with integrity and respect to ensure that every member's voice is valued. Our first official meeting in February saw us endorse our Youth Council Group Agreement, a framework we began shaping during our induction. This agreement outlines how we will work together throughout the year and sets the tone for our shared experiences. During the same meeting, we engaged with the city's strategy and organisational impact team, who deepened our understanding of the council plan and organisation strategy. An interactive priority-setting exercise helped us appreciate the many factors that influence decision-making in local government. We also received a meaningful presentation on the acknowledgement of country, prompting us to reflect on the meaning and significance of each and every word. Each of us have since revisited it individually, and we hope to finalise the version we'll use in 2026 at our next meeting, which I believe is next week. Right here too. As our term has progressed, Youth Council members have already embraced a range of opportunities to engage with the wider community. For example, in late January, we attended the Nest Youth Hub Open Day, marking the first anniversary of its launch. We had the opportunity to connect with young people and seeing firsthand the importance of safe and inclusive youth spaces in our community. In February, several members attended the Inspiring Vape Prevention Project short film launch, highlighting the value of co-design and the powerful outcomes that emerge when young people are supported and empowered to lead, collaborate, and drive change on issues that affect them. Many of us also volunteered at the Paco Festa, working alongside Cultura's Multicultural Youth Council and gathering community feedback to support evaluation of the event. This experience also introduced us to the importance of data collection in securing grants and funding to support the delivery of major events. We have also now held our first of 4 Councillor Connect mentoring sessions, which was a valuable opportunity to begin building stronger connections with councillors and share early conversations about the issues and priorities that matter most to young people in Geelong. We also appreciated having the CEO join the session, and we thank both the councillors and the CEO for taking the time to listen, engage, and support the Youth Council in this process. Looking ahead, we're excited for what the rest of the year holds, including further community engagement, the development of our annual project, and the delivery of meaningful advice to our council in the final report. We look forward to working creatively and collaboratively to ensure that youth perspectives continue to inform the decisions that shape Greater Geelong. On behalf of the 2026 Youth Council, thank you for your time, your support, and your commitment to listening to the voices of young people. Thank you.
Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, it's my pleasure to actually move acceptance of the first report that's been presented to us tonight and be the first, I hope, of many councillors that speak highly of our youth council members. Well, what can you say after you get a presentation like that? The future's bright, and the reality is my notes here tell me that Vicky's only 15 years of age. And when you go through the other cohort of youth council members as well, we've got Bailey, who's 14, we've got Anthony, who's 13, we've got Ethan, who's 16, we've got Keely, who's 15, we've got Matilda, who's 13, we've got Mustafa, who's 17, we've got Navi, who's 15, JJ's 15, Mohammed, who's 16, and Zara, who's 13. And It's actually our first alpha generation youth council in the city of Greater Geelong. We've finally moved on from the millennials and we've moved on to the alpha generation. And in fact, the alpha generation, Mr. Mayor, is the first generation that was born with knowledge that smartphones didn't exist. They actually have had smartphones their whole life. They're also the first generation that has only known social media, so they don't know the world pre-social media. But what's really important, when you read through and you listen to Viggy's speech on behalf of the Youth Council tonight, most of the issues from this generation are about caring for other people. And they're a generation, and one of them which was really important for us, Mr. Mayor, to consider, number 2 in terms of the values of this particular youth council, and it may come as a shock to some of the councillors here, but number 2 is to ensure everyone gets to contribute and speak. What I encourage the youth council members, as you grow older, keep that value for the rest of your life. Don't use governance or other reasons not to listen to people. Keep your ears and eyes open to everybody that you can to allow them to actually speak and be heard and present their position, whatever it may be. And if you can keep that value, it will influence better decision making as councillors. Thank you for all the work you've done so far. All of us up on this table are looking forward to working with you over the next 9 to 10 months, and we do wish you a very successful 2026. And if tonight's presentation from your junior mayor is any indication, we're in for a fantastic year. Thank you.
Thank you. And mic drop, Junior Mayor Vineshram. Really impressive. This is an incredible report and an incredible start, and I really want to congratulate the current cohort, the current youth councillors. As Councillor Aitken has pointed out, it's a relatively youthful and young youth council, but what strikes me from your beginning and from this report is your understanding and your genuine capacity for reflection about the barriers that cause and lead to adversity, homelessness, isolation, and antisocial behaviour at times. You really demonstrate a great wisdom for your years, addressing racism, homophobia, and strengthening education around LGBTQIA+ inclusion, for example, your passion for the environment, and for really looking at that impact of the cost of living across all generations. It was astounding to watch you elect your mayor and deputy mayor, and it was a great honour. You showed such camaraderie and respect for each other, and that was really fantastic. I think that your development of your group agreement of value diverse perspectives and ensure respectful and equal participation in debates and discussion, really focusing on teamwork, I think that you are going to achieve a lot in your term. So I thank you and commend you for your first report.
Councillor Wilkinson. Any other councillor wishing to speak on this matter? Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and also thank you, Junior Mayor, for your excellent words. One of the most enjoyable and informative activities that I took part in my first year as a councillor last year was attending almost all of the Councillor Connect mentoring sessions. I didn't make all of them, but I went to quite a number, and I'm looking forward to going to them this year. The opportunities for information sharing, understanding between youth and more senior people is very valuable, and it doesn't happen easily or often in society, and the ability to sit and listen and talk and share experiences and ideas is very valuable. So again, congratulations to all of the Youth Council for putting themselves forward to learn about what it takes to be in the public eye and to contribute to society. And I'm sure that you will all continue to contribute to society, even if you're lucky enough to live as long as I have. So well done.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation tonight. Excellent. It was lovely meeting all of you, I think, during the session recently when you were talking about your individual projects. So thank you for allowing us to participate in that. There's been already some wise words that have been put to you, but the one thing that I'd like to also, I guess, put to you as a suggestion is that you don't get opportunities like this often, and this is a terrific opportunity over the next 12 months where you really need to try and be as courageous as you possibly can, and that's not always easy, but you're obviously courageous people or as individuals, because otherwise you wouldn't have put yourself forward. And what I mean by that is it is okay to disagree with each other, and you should put your views forward. What we are looking for here is diversity in thinking. So you can still be very respectful, and you mentioned respect, which is very important. You can be very respectful to each other, but you've got this unique opportunity, this 12 months, where you're actually encouraged to put your voice forward. Talk to as many people as you can in your community and advocate for them. And there are lots of different voices on topics that you said you're going to cover this year that could be controversial, but that's great. That's what we need to hear. So really step out of your shell this next 12 months and have a real crack at this, because you don't get opportunities like this often.
Eddie? Any other councillor wishing to speak on this item? If not, Councillor Aiken to close.
Nothing further to add, just bravo to the 2026 group.
Put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The next item is the new Heritage Overlays Greater Geelong Outer Areas Study. The mover, Councillor Katos, moves. Councillor Sullivan, second. Councillor Katos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Heritage Overlays, really back in September last year, we did adopt the Geelong Greater Outer Areas Heritage Study, and there were several properties that were being considered at the time but needed a bit further investigation and consultation with traditional owners, community stakeholders and those property owners, so they could be assessed more fulsomely. And basically this is now those additional properties that have come back to us. There's the Ripley Streamside Reserve, I beg your pardon, Cryobowl Skate Park, the Roundhouse there in Belmont, which is the mid-century design, St Nicholas Serbian Orthodox Church, and there were a number of Orthodox churches, including my own church, the Assumption of Our Lady Greek Orthodox Church, which were approved, which were in the previous one. When you look at some of the Orthodox churches particularly, they look a bit boring on the outside, but very ornate inside, beautiful churches inside. Also property at Hamlin Heights, St Paul's Lutheran Church in Grovedale, which does celebrate the rich Lutheran and German history of Grovedale, originally Germantown, up until First World War. And then for obvious reasons, the name was changed to Grovedale at the time. And also there's a Victorian cottage in Moorabool, the Geelong Boundary Market, which I know Councillor Aitken will be excited has been put in there. And also a Victorian residence in Port Arlington. There's been an upgrade, additional citation for Creighton in Lovely Banks, and there was a couple that didn't proceed, and also a couple there, the former Stewart's Reserve there in Warralilly Boulevard and Montpelier Park there, just needing further consultation with the traditional owners. So they're not in there for the moment, but in the future these could be in. But basically we're just seeking basically that we adopt these additional properties in the assessment study, which is part 2. Support the amendment and request the Minister to authorise its preparation for exhibition.
Councillor Katos. Councillor Sullivan.
On this one. Thank you. Second everything that Councillor Katos has said. He's summarised it quite well. We did put this out for consultation many months ago, and now we ask the Minister to take it up for exhibition as well. It is interesting, though, to see the breadth and width of the items in here in the report in total. Not just churches and homes, but trails, markers, and the cryo skateball as well have all been assessed as part of this. It's a great breadth of history across Geelong, including the history of the name of Grovedale itself, named after Pine Grove, the homestead in that area. But this is a fantastic part. It includes so many varied items of the history of Greater Geelong, and it's fantastic that hopefully some of these will be protected even further. Thank you.
Any other councillor? Councillor Eddie Contell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This is a terrific report, and I know when many of us think about heritage overlay, we often think about houses and buildings, but what's unique about this report is, as Councillor Sullivan has already indicated, the breadth of assets that are being considered, and others will talk to these as well, I'm sure, and maybe some will hit on the same one that I'm just about to talk about here. But one of the ones that gives me really great joy in seeing here is the Corio skate bowls, and this is a place that's very familiar to me because as a child, probably some 48 years ago, the now Mayor and I would go down there and spend a lot of time at the skate bowls, and I didn't realise until late last week when I caught up with the original 4 students that started the campaign to build and develop these skate bowls, that their campaign started in about 1977, 1978, and they were just young guys. They belonged to the Corio skateboard club. They had T-shirts made up by speakies, which some of the guys still had, and I just remember as a child it was so exciting going down there, and I must admit I never did jump into the actual bowl. It's crazy even to this day, but I did scoot around the smaller bowl. But I'm not sure if you're aware, but these skate bowls are actually iconic, internationally known, and you could drive past these bowls on Anarchy Road and not even know they're there. It's quite spectacular, and you must make a trip down there. But Councillor Story and I were talking. I didn't know that Councillor Story has a skateboarding background, but he's an aficionado on this, and he mentioned that perhaps one of the most considered and famous skateboarders may have potentially skated at the skate bowls, a fellow by the name of Tony Hawk. I actually did a lot of research on Tony Hawk, Councillor Story, and you are correct. Tony Hawk has jumped into that bowl with his skateboard. So what's great about this is that the memories that I have here, as you can tell, are quite joyful from my youth, means that these assets will be here for generations to come, for young and old people to be able to create wonderful memories. So I'll just leave it at that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Contell, any other councillor wishing to speak on the matter? Councillor Story, you seem to be mentioned in dispatches, but as an expert, anything to say?
Very briefly, Mr Mayor, I've never been on a skateboard in my life, but I have a son who's a very keen skateboarder into his 30s, and there's Tony Hawk that the Deputy Mayor mentioned wrote an autobiography, and the title was "The Answer is Never," which means when you're going to give up skateboarding, and that's the answer is never.
Okay, perfect. Again. All right, so back to Councillor Katos to close then, I think.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
All right, so we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. Then we have the draft plan for nature of 2026 to 2036. Can I have a move of that, Councillor Wilkinson, and second as Councillor Sinclair? So Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. As the Chair of Environment and Circular Economy, it is my delight to present this draft plan for nature 2026-2036. It is obviously a 10-year plan, but within that, a more detailed series of objectives and monitorable goals as well. So the City has prepared this draft plan for nature, and it's had a nod already from both Jennifer Banto and Jean Nell, which is fabulous. It sets the future direction for biodiversity programs in the City Greater Geelong, and it's seeking endorsement tonight prior to 4 weeks of community engagement. The plan is aligned to Council's commitment to nature as outlined in the clever and creative Future for Geelong Region plan, our council plan and the environment strategy. It was developed collaboratively with various stakeholders through extensive engagement over a 4-year period. So the plan will undergo 4 weeks engagement, as I've said, which is really important. It's already had a lot of input, but it's very important that we actually hear from the community. Some background, which is really alarming and informs some of this work, is that the city is experiencing significant population growth while climate change is also leading to drier conditions and a warmer future. We only have 18% of the municipality's original remnant vegetation and wetlands that are still preserved. There's only 9.7% of the city's land that's set within a conservation estate, which is well below the national goal of protection, which is 30%. At least 24 of the 41 species and ecological communities listed as threatened by the Federal Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act have habitat on land managed by the city. More than 90% of the city's ecological vegetation classes are rare, vulnerable or endangered. There is a lot of work to do, and this plan provides the mechanism with which to start and continue some very, very important work. It sets out a number of extensive goals in terms of Wadawurrung country values, protections, connections and restoration, community and partnerships and climate change and supporting nature. And each goal includes 10-year strategic objectives and targets and set for action and review for every 2 to 3 years. I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm also really pleased to support the release of the draft plan for nature for consultation. It's a really important piece of strategic work that recognises that our environment underpins our health and livability and the resilience of our community, and I think some of the Youth Council's priorities have acknowledged that as well. I think it would be remiss to talk about a plan for nature without acknowledging the thousands of years of stewardship of First Nations people and the Wadawurrung people here in Geelong or in the local on Wadawurrung country, and the incredible protection and custodianship of land and waterways. Unfortunately, as Councillor Wilkinson has just outlined some of those quite stark statistics, it does look a little bit different now since colonisation. I'm not going to repeat the statistics that you went through, but I think the key message that I really hear from that is 80% of our remnant vegetation has disappeared, and the rest that we have remaining is quite vulnerable or rare. So it is really important for us as councillors, as stewards, for the term that we're in council, that we do support a plan to have ongoing care and protection of some of these species. So this plan looks at a couple of different strategies to do this. So, and it's quite coincidental because we had a walkthrough with our planning team, our environmental planning team this morning, through a particular bit of Armstrong Creek to see how this actually goes. These plans and policies are actually implemented. So we walked through patches of revegetation, we walked through some heritage or very old trees that have been protected as part of conservation areas of management. I discovered that there's a population or a small patch of Bellarine yellow gum quite near my house that's been protected. So this walkthrough was, really, really timely, given that we're talking about this plan that is looking at protecting this remaining habitat that we do have, particularly large patches and old trees, strengthening planning controls and securing local biodiversity offsets, expanding and connecting habitat through biolinks. And so we see a lot, I'm in a developing area, and we see a lot of, that larger wildlife like kangaroos starting to be a little bit landlocked. So these biolinks are really incredibly important. So it is a real tension that we have at the moment. We are a growing area and we have some significant housing targets that we have to meet over the next few years, and really important that we meet those housing targets for providing affordable housing for community. But there is a tension and protection of the environment, and it's there's no simple solution. So the work that officers have put into this, and it's not been a short period of time. This has been a lot of work developing it. We've had several briefings to this point, and it's wonderful to get it out to community. So thank you to those officers, and really looking forward to hearing what the members of the public have to say before endorsing this plan.
Councillor Sinclair. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Wilkinson to close.
I just want to take the opportunity to thank the teams that have been involved in the formation of this plan and the stakeholders that have contributed to the really important information that is contained within. As part of this plan, there's also the engagement process that's documented, and in that there's a significant missing piece, and that's the voice of young people. So I say to our youth councillors here, take this plan and look at this plan and share this plan, because stewardship is really, really important, and these are decisions and actions that will have impact for generations to come. So your input would be highly valued. So I commend this report. I thank officers again and look forward to hearing the feedback after the next 4 weeks.
Councillor Wilkinson, so I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. The next item is the draft place naming policy. Can I have a councillor move that? Councillor Cadwell and Councillor Burson to second. Councillor Cadwell.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. This item endorses the draft naming policy, which guides the naming and renaming of public places for the release for a 4-week period for public consultation, with a report to come back to Council following that time for formal endorsement. And the policy intends to provide a clear and consistent approach for the naming and renaming of roads, facilities, council assets, open spaces and localities within the City of Greater Geelong. It prioritises Aboriginal heritage, gender equity, cultural recognition, local history and engagement with the community. And importantly, place names need to be easily and uniquely recognisable, not only to ensure easy and quick and accurate identification for emergency services and important deliveries and things, but so that they're easily recognised by the community. The policy also recognises the importance of diversity in our community and commits the City to improving recognition of Aboriginal and cultural heritage, prioritising Aboriginal names in conjunction with the Wadawurrung Traditional Owners Corporation to ensure that names are culturally appropriate and meaningful. Also importantly, it promotes diversity, providing female or gender diverse peoples, multicultural, migrant and refugee communities, with the opportunity to have cultural recognition in the naming of the aforementioned localities and roads and facilities. The City aims to have a minimum of 70% of new or renamed places named after individuals to be named after significant women or gender diverse people in line with the Victorian State Government Gender Equity Strategy and Action Plan. And I commend this to the community for feedback over the next 4 weeks.
Councillor Burson.
Yeah, just wanted to follow up the, when you get a job and it takes seconds to type something into Google and whether you're going to make it or not, I think the main priority needs to be the safety first. So but they're addressing that. So as long as it's easy enough to get to, I think, because if we're going to lose lives based off something being too complicated, I think that's vitally important that we need to run with. And the financial sustainability I'm very interested in as well. But, you know, like it's a great honour to be part of things, but it shouldn't be coming at the expense of everybody else. That's pretty much it, really.
Councillor Burson. Any other councillor wishing to speak on the item? Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Look, I've been waiting 3 years for this policy to enact the community's wishes associated with the Norlane Arc in the naming of components of that particular facility. So I'm looking forward to the 4 weeks presentation in the community to receive feedback. And then once we actually have adopted this policy, I'm looking forward to working with the administration to fulfil the community's wishes about recognition of significant individuals from the northern suburbs in those component names associated with the Norlane Arc. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Oh, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Councillor Aiken may have been waiting for 4 years, but there are people in our community that have been waiting for hundreds of years for recognition. And this is what this guide does. It actually provides structure for council to redress some of the balance that exists in our community in terms of names and places. What it does is, I suppose, it makes us look at history. It makes us research the significance that women, that Wadawurrung people, that people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds have made and contributed to our community. And it looks at that and includes that in terms of the prioritisation of naming places. So it's a really, I suppose this started with the 2024 sort of Put Her Name On It program run by the Victorian government. It sort of started to shift the dial a little bit, and we've actually seen this right across Victoria in terms of changing. So it's great the City of Greater Geelong now have a more structured process in terms of redressing the balance. So it's really exciting.
Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Eddie Contell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I'd just like to thank the officers for all the work that they've put into this. I understand that it's not a simple document to draft, and there's been a lot of feedback from councillors. And while the initial list of naming priorities is well intended, I appreciate that. I feel that perhaps it may, and it certainly attempts to demonstrate commitment to diversity and inclusion. However, the hierarchical priority on certain categories, in a way, may unintentionally exclude or undervalue others within the community who do make significant contributions. I know that it's only going out for consultation, but we've already had feedback coming through to us. Some of us, I've certainly had people talking to me. And the concerns I have with the approach that we're taking, which I've aired during our briefing sessions, is that it may unintentionally narrow the eligibility. The current recommendations may exclude to a degree many Australians, men and women, who have significantly shaped our local and national identity. I don't believe that it adequately recognises veterans and service personnel. As we know, veterans and military service members are a major part of Australian history and local communities, and their contribution should equally be considered. It may also reduce community buy-in. The rigid priority list can make the community members feel that their suggestions are less valued and that if they don't fall into the higher ranked categories. And it can create unnecessary pressure and competition between cultural and social groups. I think a naming places policy really should unite communities and not create an impression of favourism. So I think that a better approach would be an equal weighted approach, where it's more inclusive and representative of every community member's contribution, whether that be an Aboriginal leader or an elder, a pioneering female scientist, a multicultural business leader, or a decorated veteran. They should all be considered equally on their merits. So I think an equally weighted policy would also better align with community expectations, making residents feel more comfortable in participating because the process appears balanced and fair. And it supports a merit-based decision-making. Instead of being forced to fit a name into a hierarchy, decision makers can evaluate each option based on relevance, appropriateness and public benefit. So that's my take on it. I'll let others speak to it further.
Councillor Contell. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Oh, Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Respectfully, I disagree, Councillor Contell, Deputy Mayor. I think this is a policy to correct an imbalance. It's not exclusive. It doesn't preclude any demographic of person from being nominated as a new name for a place. It just reprioritises, so we correct a balance of groups that might not have been recognised historically and are not represented on council assets equally at the moment. I'd also point out that it is in line with state legislation, so there's limitations to how we can generate this policy. There is state legislation requirements for how we have to prioritise, and this policy effectively aligns with that. I spoke, I think, when we had our naming of Biala Community Hub and Urama Community Hub in Armstrong Creek late last year, and I spoke about how appropriate these names are, not just in preserving, I guess, Wadawurrung language, which much like some of those species we just spoke about in the Plan for Nature is a threatened language, so it's about keeping that language alive, but also the connection to place. Biala this morning walking along Armstrong Creek, which means place of many river red gums. You walk along that creek where there is many river red gums and you understand that meaning and the depth and connection to that place. So I think it's really important that we do honour those languages. We do recognise women and diverse people in our naming policies. And also recognise that we name a lot of stuff. So my suburb, around my block, there's streets named after Game of Thrones characters. Like, it's bottom of the barrel. Might have been great during the season, but during the series, but once we got to season 8, probably a bit out of date. So we've got opportunities to name lots of things and to create equality throughout through using this policy. And if we get it right, we cancel the policy. If we create that, if we correct that imbalance, we don't need this policy moving forwards, because you can just have, there's no balance to incorrect. So we want it to be a short-term policy that corrects an imbalance that we can then just name as nominations come through.
Sinclair. Councillor Kados.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I have very similar sentiments to Councillor Eddie Contel regarding this. I look at the policy, and if you look at the place names in Geelong, streets, buildings, etc., really from the 1830s and Geelong settlement till really the 60s, they were either of British origin or Indigenous names. Our very town's an Indigenous name. Corio, Yuyangs. Our main street is Indigenous name. Moorabool Street, Jerringham Street, Barrabool Road. There's a lot of, obviously, English names, because that was the dominant, really, Anglo-Saxons were dominant up till the 50s and 60s in Geelong. And then people from the other side of the world started arriving, just like my parents did. And I'd like to see our names, our streets, our facilities, our parks and gardens, as Councillor Contel pointed out, on their merits. I want to see someone or a group or a person, a building named after them because of their actions, because of what they've done, their deeds, on their merits, not because they're next on a rotating list, with all respect. I understand, and look, times have changed. Even if you look at that period up until, and it's very male-dominated, the place names, I agree with that. Up until, say, the 50s and 60s, business leaders and even politics was very male-dominated. Hence, you have a lot of these names. If they're named after a politician or a business leader, they tend to be men. And I understand that. But times have changed now. You've got women in business, women in politics, migrants who've performed well in Geelong and have done well. Logically, people will be named, places will be named after them as we move forward. That's just, to me, it's a no-brainer. And the issue that I have is say there's a facility that is very deserving to be named after a particular person, whoever that person might be. But because of this policy, they're excluded. That to me would be a travesty. If that person happens to be a white male of Anglo heritage, but they've done so much in the community, in that sport or that field or that community group, that all of a sudden their name's thrown to the side, that I wouldn't like to see happen. I want our policies to be on their merits, on people's merits and groups' merits. And naturally, that's open to everybody.
Any other Councillor Story?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As you know, I have the privilege of chairing the Heritage Advisory Committee, and this policy was presented at the meeting last night and discussed quite extensively. That committee, as you know, has representatives from external bodies such as the National Trust, and there's a significant body of wisdom and knowledge about the heritage of Geelong going way back in that group of people. And they were warmly receptive to this as a guidance. I know it says rules, but it will be a guideline. We'll have to see a bit how it works. And whilst I understand the various perspectives around the council chamber tonight, at least that committee thought that it's a good way forward. So I'll leave it at that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Story. Anyone else still to speak? We move back to Councillor Cadwell to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I think it's. I think we've heard some really interesting perspectives tonight. Certainly, as the Women in Community Life Chair, I'm grateful that we've had a discussion about gender, and part of this policy actually attempts to correct the balance or redress the balance. The International Women's Day event, the International Women's Day theme this year is actually about correcting the balance or restoring the balance. Balancing the scales, in fact, is the exact phrase, and certainly I think this policy attempts to do that. But I do think it also really clearly highlights that there are opportunities for non-Anglo-Saxon males to be recognised, and that's obviously an opportunity for women, for migrants, for refugees, and people from culturally and linguistically diverse communities. It certainly doesn't seem to me to read that it intends to exclude Anglo-Saxon males, so I don't think we have a major concern there. That's probably all I've got to say about that. Thanks.
Put that to the vote. All those in favour? The next item is the Councillor Expenses Policy. I have a mover. Councillor Nelson moves. Seconder, Councillor Eddie Contell. So, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is just a procedural report. Councillor Expenses Policy has been reviewed and benchmarked across many Victorian councils. The changes were proposed to ensure that the councils represent best practice governance, promoting transparency and responsible use of their resources, whilst ensuring that councillors are equipped with training and other resources to do their jobs properly. The report aligns with Council's plan of 2025-2029 strategic priority, which is to commit the highest levels of integrity, financial stewardship and meaningful community engagement. I'll let others talk in further depth if they wish to, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Eddie?
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Aiken?
Mr Mayor, I just put a word of caution over the new proposed expenses policy, and that is requesting councillors to pay up front is fine for those of us that have the financial capacity to be able to do it, but there will be a time when there'll be people elected to this chamber who don't have the financial capacity or needs to be able to fulfil that responsibility. So I would hate this particular policy to restrict a councillor from being engaged and able to operate in the community because of financial constraints. And I'm just flagging that because it is something that will happen one day, and it shouldn't just be because we believe we have the capacity to do it. There will be some councillors elected in the future that won't have the capacity to be able to do that.
So, Aiken, any other councillor wishing to speak on the matter? To Councillor Nelson to close.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
So we put that to the vote. All those in favour? Honestly, the Aged Care Advisory Committee, if I can have a mover, Councillor Eddie Contell moves, and a seconder, Councillor Preston to second. So, Councillor Eddie.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This report addresses the statutory obligations under the Aged Care Act of 2024, which are quite significant. There's significant changes to the Act, and it's relating to responsible persons. And there's a recommendation that there be an establishment of an Aged Care Advisory Committee, and that is in order to provide independent advice, transparency, obviously oversight and assurance to Council regarding the effectiveness of regulatory compliance and governance and continuous improvement in this sector. Also, recent legal advice and guidance from the Commonwealth Government and the MAV emphasise that to meet these obligations, providers must establish robust and transparent governance. So as a result of that, what Council is doing here tonight is recommending that we approve the establishment of an Aged Care Advisory Committee to provide that oversight that I just articulated earlier, and that we adopt the Aged Care Advisory Committee terms of reference, and that we appoint a number of our councillors who we have nominated, being Councillor Rowan Story, Elise Wilkinson, Emma Sinclair and Councillor Chris Burson as the council representatives on the Aged Care Advisory Committee, and in addition that we appoint Councillor Rowan Story as the chair of the Aged Care Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Councillor Burson.
Yes, I'd just like to say that I'm interested in the advisory committee just due to being, when I was in the police, we used to have welfare checks that were done. A lot of times there's people in aged care and their families are overseas or they're interstate, or for example when COVID happened and they can't see them, etc. A lot of the time they're very isolated, etc. So I'm very interested to make sure that we actually do the best we can do for the aged people. I know Councillor Story is closer to it than I am, but it's more important to him. But I'm happy to get involved because obviously it's something that matters to all of us. We've all got family in there, and I've seen some pretty terrible accommodation for some of them in the future. So I'm glad that we're looking into it and having oversight.
Councillor Burson, I think he meant as a doctor. You're closer to the issue, Councillor Story. Okay. Any other councillor wishing to speak on the matter? So, Wilkinson?
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm pleased to have been nominated by my fellow councillors to participate and be part of this committee. And just note that council don't run or operate any residential aged care services. So, yep, just in reference to Councillor Burson's point. But yeah, pleased to offer my my knowledge in this area as part of the committee.
Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Story.
Well, I wasn't going to, Mr Mayor, but I think I have to. I'm conscious of the honour of being asked to be chair of this important committee to look after this new direction that we're taking and to take care of the legal responsibilities and care of our fellow councillors, even the young ones. And to Councillor Burson, I would say, in a pop culture reference, that he might get live long and prosper.
Councillor Story. Any other councillor wishing to speak? If not, Councillor Eddie.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and thank you for everyone's contribution. Councillor Aitken mentioned that we had Generation Alpha in the room today. It made me realise how much closer I'm getting to needing these services. Hoping I'm not a conflict of interest on this report, actually. But I think we've got a great cohort of councillors on the Aged Care Advisory Committee, and look forward to your feedback and guidance throughout the course of this term. Thank you.
So with that, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is the proposed sale of land, 2125 Oakden Road, Drysdale. Can I have a mover of that? Councillor Story to move. Seconder, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This resolution illustrates, I think, one of the legal maxims that all cases turn on their own particular facts, and that's never more obvious than in this particular circumstance where this parcel of land has a particular history, it has a particular topography and a potential for further use. The matter first came before us on the 28th of October, and it was designated and decided that it was surplus to requirements for the city and it should be put out for sale. The Bellarine group of councillors were concerned about possible any possible future use of that land, particularly for social housing. And some further work was done, and that's not to denigrate in any way the work that was done bringing the matter to the Council on the 28th of October, but further detailed work was done, and that addressed the issues to do with open space, parking, social housing, alternate housing, and with regard to all of those matters, careful consideration showed that the open space issue didn't really work. The land is long and narrow, it's enclosed on 3 sides. The local residents have access to significant access areas within 400 metres of this area. So the sort of shape of the land militated against that. In terms of parking, parking was a function of this piece of land when people would park there and went to the cemetery adjacent, but with the expansion plans of the cemetery, parking is accounted for and will be available within the footprint of the cemetery, so parking is no longer a particular issue. Social housing was a concern for the what I might call the Bellarine group of councillors, because there's very little social housing or alternate housing in the Bellarine Peninsula. Representations were made by social housing for older women, and meetings were held. Again, this was looked at very carefully by officers, and in terms of the lot dimension and configuration, also the existing mature vegetation, it didn't really readily support high density volume accommodation, and so may not be really suitable for that. Also, there's not good access to public transport and rail services and other everyday services. So in sum, Mr Mayor and councillors, the recommendation is that this piece of land should be sold and that the council approves the sale of this land and authorises the Chief Executive Officer or delegate to sign documents to complete the sale of the land, as you can see on the screen. But it's important to note that this slightly extended process has elevated the importance of social housing in the Bellarine Peninsula in particular, and for that I'm grateful, as are my fellow councillors Sullivan and Wilkinson. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Story. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and I certainly endorse everything that my colleague Councillor Roman has stated. You know, the role of a councillor is to be entrusted with the care of public assets, services and dollars. And what we're seeing here is a really fantastic use of process in that councillors needed more time to consider a decision, we got time granted to meet with the community, get further information from officers and make a decision on an area of land that is close to many people's hearts and associated with a possible use that's close to many more. And we've come here at the right outcome that we can say we've made a responsible decision, an informed decision, and go ahead with the councillor or the officer's recommendation that we have here. That'll be the best use of this land to serve the community as a whole going forwards. Thank you.
Sullivan. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you. So to echo my colleagues' comments, I think the officers have supported us through a really rigorous process. In October, when we first brought this property to council, there were other properties that had had a really vigorous assessment of their suitability for social housing, and this had been a newly identified parcel of land that hadn't had that same rigorous assessment. Since then, officers have gone away and really looked into the viability of this land for social housing, including, extra meetings with us as well to take us through really complicated spreadsheets to demonstrate how they assess its suitability. And I'm comfortable now that due diligence has been done. I think what I would say though as chair of the Social and Affordable Housing Committee is it is a holistic process. We still want to look and identify areas of land within this process of land asset review to see which ones are suitable for social housing, because we are in a housing crisis and it's probably going to get worse given our current economic situation. So that is still really important that we advocate for and enforce the policy that we have. It's just this particular block has been assessed as not suitable. And to echo, I guess, Councillor Story's comments around SHOW, the advocacy group, the Social Housing for Older Women group. They have really highlighted the need for social housing on the Bellarine in particular, and the need to assess land in semi-rural areas a little bit differently. We can't use the same metrics as for public transport and accessibility that we would in a more urban area, because obviously everything's a little bit further away. So we have to assess it for the suitability of the place. So very much looking forward to working with the team to identify additional blocks of land that we can allocate for social housing, while also working towards our debt mitigation targets.
Councillor Sinclair. Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, I really want to thank the team for a much more robust report and with a thorough assessment of this particular site. And to echo those sentiments about the Bellarine, so one of the elements that we look for in terms of a suitability for a site for social housing is accessibility and a footpath, for example. And there are many areas around the Bellarine where the road is also the footpath. So we really do, it does need a lens with which to really explore. And we also do understand, obviously from, not only from show, but from the local neighbourhood houses and our local Bellarine associations, that there are a number of older people living in cars, living in parks, and couch surfing across the Bellarine, and there is a growing number of older women over the age of 55 who find themselves homeless and wanting to remain within their community given the rental stress. So perhaps the rental stress in Drysdale may not be as high or as impacted as it might be in other regions. It is still it's still significant and growing. So I really thank Show again, and for the people who have sent emails in and contacted us to talk about that and raise the need for more affordable and social housing on the Bellarine. I also acknowledge that, the slope of the land, the mature trees, the access, the difficulty with accessing services at this particular block makes it more challenging. And I understand also in terms of our broader scope that we really do want to be able to keep delivering services and provide infrastructure across the city of Greater Geelong, and part of that is paying down debt. So it is a fine balance, but we will continue to walk the rope.
Councillor Wilkinson. Any other councillor wishing to speak? If not, we move back to Councillor Nelson. Sorry, Councillor Story, you moved in. Sorry, my apology.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. So put that to the vote. All those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. The next item is Municipal Association of Victoria motion. I have Councillor move a motion.
Mr Mayor, I'll move this for the purpose of debate. I believe that there's a deferral on the table.
The deferral, is that right?
No, I'm not moving a deferral. I'm moving the item as agreed on the agenda. I believe that Councillor Sinclair was going to second that, and I'm moving it for the purpose of debate in order that councillors can talk about the reason for their deferral.
Councillor Cadwell moves. A seconder.
Second on for the purpose of
Councillor
debate.
Eddy.
Mr Mayor, I've got a procedural motion that I would like to defer the report, and I ask that this motion please be displayed on the screen now.
So you're moving that motion there. Deferral motion. Seconder to that. So Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you. So I note that this motion was developed concurrently with our policy that we put forward at last February's council meeting, and there's some misalignment between some of the key elements of the policy, particularly around dates. So I'm proposing that we defer the motion till we can go back and look and align this MAV motion so it aligns with the actual policy that we endorsed only in February.
Yeah, I think just in terms of some understanding, I don't think that all the information that we need to make an effective decision in relation to this is before us. So, yeah, would really appreciate the extra time in terms of the council review of this.
Just checking with governance as a procedural motion.
Procedural
Just
motions,
checking on
Mr.
that.
Mayor.
All right, so anyone else wishing to speak on the matter? Councillor Aiken.
Mr. Mayor, I just point out that we've been advised that if it is deferred, it won't be able to make this year's MAV AGM. So, in fact, if it is deferred, it will be at least 12 months before it can be considered by the MAV, because the MAV representative is not able to put forward a motion to the floor because it doesn't have the endorsement of the local council. So, yeah.
Anyone else wishing to speak on the deferral motion?
Mr. Mayor, can we clarify that point that Councillor Aiken has put forward? Is that correct or not?
I don't know the agenda of the MAV and how
Probably
often it meets.
we might rely on our governance officer to advise us of the specific date if you happen to remember them, but I know there's 2 state councils, so there's a state council in May and I believe a state council in October or November. It potentially could go to that state council, but it will need to come back to the councillor chamber again for re-endorsement or endorsement at that time. So,
Response? Anyone else wishing to speak on the matter? To close.
Yeah, to reiterate that point, that it still can still go to MAV in 2026. It would be the next council, next MAV council in October, but nothing further.
So then put that to the vote, the deferral motion. Those in favour? Those against? So the deferral motion is carried, so the matter is deferred. The next item is the Council Plan Biannual Report for the first half of 2025-2026. So a mover, Councillor Aiken moves, seconder, Councillor Katos. So Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. In June last year, the Council adopted its 25 to 29 Council Plan, and this is actually the first annual report that's come back to us. So it's reporting on the first 6 months. So the reality is, because it is a 4-year plan, it's only the first 6-month period, it is actually very hard to make a judgment about how council is actually progressing against its city plan objectives. When you do read the report, it actually says most items are on track, but because of the brief time period, it is very hard to be able to make that assessment. But what is important is there's one item that isn't on track, Mr. Mayor, but it's actually because of councillor intervention, and that is that one of the major initiatives was to upgrade the existing resource recovery facilities, prepare for the new food organics and green organics, and the glass curbside collection services. This actual initiative has actually been delayed, Mr. Mayor, and I'll remind you, in December 2025, Council resolved to oppose the rollout of separate curbside glass services within the City of Greater Geelong, and the City continues to advocate to the State Government for consideration of more cost-effective and sustainable glass recycling alternatives, Mr. Mayor. So that intervention by the Council has stopped and delayed this particular project, but it was an important decision that Council made in December 2025. But if you look at the report in terms of the assessment, everything else is on track at the present time, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Katos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as Councillor Aitken pointed out, this is a biannual report, and we're basically 6 months into 4 years. As I said, most things are on track, but there's a couple of things I'd like to touch on, particularly in core and critical infrastructure, and the need for more housing and land to be released. Geelong is running out of land. There's plain and simple. Armstrong Creek is almost gone, land-wise, and the growth fronts out in the north are well and truly stalled. Whether it be from state government or from us, we need to open up more land in the north. Lovely Banks, the northwest area, also the former quarry around the cement works, Creamery Road, these things need to get going because we're out of land, and it's about affordability. We want young people to be able to afford to buy their own homes, and if the price of land keeps escalating because of lack of supply, then it's just making building your first home out of reach of young people, which I don't want to see. And we have to get more land to market. You bring land to market, supply increases, and prices will fall, create competition in the market. The other one, the integrated transport plan, so much of that is sitting with the state government and quite frankly inaction. We've touched on it before, the trucks in Ryrie Street. How long has that been an issue? I remember former Mayor John Mitchell got elected on that issue 20 years ago, and it still hasn't been resolved. The trucks going through Ryrie Street. Bellarine Link hasn't progressed at all, the logical finishing of the ring road and extension out to the Bellarine, which could solve the Ryrie Street issue. And then there's our public transport network, which in my book is a shambles in Geelong. It needs major investment in the train network, our connections to Melbourne, our internal connections. We have a train that runs down our north-south spine that is not used for transport inside Geelong. And then our bus network. Anyone lives out on the Bellarine wants to catch a bus into Geelong, good luck. How many buses you might have to take to do that, just as an example. But it needs a major overhaul and investment from the state government. And then the other one, drainage. We've talked about it before, the stormwater. Huge impost on City of Greater Geelong. If you go to Melbourne, they don't have to worry about stormwater, just in local streets. So essentially, we need Bowen Water to take on those responsibilities because we're constantly having issues brought before us about flooding, and we need the infrastructure's in good order, but with Geelong's growth, those drains just simply can't handle the volume of water anymore. We're putting more houses, particularly in the inner city, into the same drains. So something's got to give there. They just can't handle it. So we need some major decisions and investment from the state government, and hopefully being an election year, we'll see either investment from the state or from the opposition.
Katos. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Wilkinson?
Thank you. Just in relation to the buses and the Bellarine, given that Councillor Katos has raised that, there is a bus review, and I would really encourage all community members to participate in that bus review and give your opinion and your experience, and that will help part of our integrated transport strategy.
Councillor Wilkinson. Any other councillor wishing to speak on this matter?
Mr. Mayor, I'll just support Councillor Katos in his presentation. He did an excellent job articulating that the Transport Network Operating Plan is something that has stalled for decades. I remember when Harrison Tippett was a journalist at the Geelong Addy, he would call me every Christmas to ask what was occurring with the Transport Network Operating Plan, and nothing moved from one year to another. So it really does need significant investment and focus from state government.
Any other councillor wishing to speak on the matter? If not, Councillor Aitken to close.
Fascinating debate, Mr. Mayor, because it's actually our city plan, but it sounded like it was actually the state government city plan. If you listen to comments that have been made by councillors, this is our plan. It's our responsibility to advocate. It's our responsibility to keep items on track. It's our responsibility to articulate what the Geelong community is actually asking for. And if it does mean we have to lobby both the federal and state governments to get those outcomes that our communities demand for, it's our responsibility. So this is our city plan. It's what we adopted. We're 6 months into a 4-year plan. We've got a long way to go. But I don't have a problem that councillors are drawing attention to public transport, because the reality is it is the most important issue outside of housing in terms of the Geelong region. And there are a number of elements in this city plan that try to develop strategies and opportunities to improve public transport, and importantly integrate public transport into the new growth areas that are existing and our existing outer lying areas like the Ballerine that's been mentioned by Councillor Wilkinson as well too.
Councillor Aikens, so with that we put it to the vote. Those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. Send the record of informal meetings of councillors. If I can have a mover, Councillor Eddie Contell, and a seconder, Councillor Ron Nelson. So Councillor Eddie.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, this is procedural. We do have governance rules that oblige us to table the records of informal meetings, and that's what this is doing here tonight.
Councillor Contell. Councillor Nelson.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
Anyone else wishing to speak on the matter? Not Councillor Eddie, just to close? No.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
And we put that to the vote. All those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. We then have a confidential matter regarding the community infrastructure funding recommendation. If I have a mover that we move this into confidential, Councillor Eddie Contell, Councillor Katos. Second, any councillor wishing to speak in relation to the matter? No. So we'll vote on that. All those in favour that we move to confidential? That's unanimous. So we now close the meeting to the public. That concludes all the items that are for consideration this evening. And I'd like to thank everyone who's attended, including the Sacred Heart, and all those virtually in attendance. And thank you for this evening.
What do we got?